Welcome to STS TV. For today's episode, we are going to learn the 11 developments of science and technology in the Philippines in the American and post-Commonwealth era. Let us discover first the American era. Transportation. Submarines were used during the American period. It is used in trading, war, and transportation to other countries through the water. Carretela, also known as kalesa, a horse-drawn two-wheeled cart used commonly by the ilustrados for their personal travels. During the American period, the city of Manila was teeming with carretelas, but this declined in popularity after the devastation of the World War II. Railways. The railway trains goes to and from the different points of the Philippines to carry people, their goods, trade, and livelihood. Aircrafts. It was introduced by the Americans. The first use of aircrafts in the Philippines were during wars, especially against the Japanese.
Now, let's move on communication system during American era. Communication devices like the wireless telegraph, telephone, radios, and cinema were introduced by the Americans in the Philippines. Let's start with the first one, telegraph. Telegraph in the Philippines was opened in 1873 between Manila and island of Corregidor and got connected the United States after 20 years. As an emerging social media and technology hub in Southeast Asia, the service has been too slow in the digital age. Next one is telephone. The Philippine Island Telephone and Telegraph Company is an American-owned which started operation in 1905 in Metro Manila. In 1928, merged with Cebu, Panay, and Negros telephone and telegraph companies to form the Philippine Long Distance Telephone Company, or also known as PLDT. In 1932, the Colonial Philippines Congress granted PLDT a 50-year franchise to operate a national telephone system. Next one is radio. Early on, all radio programs were in English. This was the American colonial era in the Philippines. The current oldest continuously operating radio station is DZRB AM, which began live on September 3, 1927 as KZRM. And the last one is cinema. American cinema and US imperialism are inextricably bound together in a thorough exploration of cinematic representation of the Philippines in US film both during and immediately after US colonization of the island. The film and discursive records remaining from the 1898 to 1904. That's all for the communication system in American era.
Number 3 is the discovery of minerals. Mining has always been present in the Philippines since pre-colonial times that continued through the Spanish era. However, this became a much bigger industry in the Americans' entry into the country. During the time the Americans took over, they did a geological survey where they found and confirmed that the Philippines is a mineral-rich country, meaning that the country has a great abundance of precious minerals such as gold, copper, and iron, and many others. Due to the discovery of such minerals, they passed a law called Act 468 that led to the commercialization of the Benguet gold mining. By then, the mining industry boomed and impacted the economy.
Number 4 is tropical diseases. The Americans conducted research about how to control malaria, cholera, and tuberculosis and other tropical diseases. In the malaria situation, Philippine-American Program for Malaria Control in the Philippines has of its objective the reduction of malaria to an insignificant level by annual spraying of all houses in malarious areas with DDT for at least 3 consecutive years. And thereafter, spot spraying of houses as local conditions demand. Anti-malaria drugs are used as supplementary relief measures. The total number of houses to be sprayed is about 1 million, with over 4 million houses spraying to be carried out during the 6-year period. Also, the American helps stop contact infection, bubonic plague, cholera, and smallpox were addressed by relying on the capacity of the colonial state to use force to restrict population movements, subject potential susceptible hosts to surveillance, isolate the sick, and employ therapeutics on those who could still recover. Unsurprisingly, such measures were implemented with utmost coercion to the extent that they became brutal extensions of the colonial war of aggression. That is some information that really helps Filipinos to fight the tropical diseases.
Science education. Science education during the American period was more inclined about agriculture, food processing, medicine, and pharmacy. Minimal attention was given to the development of industrial technology because of the free trade policy with the United States. Science is a systematic method for gathering and organizing knowledge about nature and the world. It develops students' scientific skill, values and attitudes, and performing critical thinking. The assigned sector when it comes to developing science is the Department of Science and Technology. It has different consulting agencies when it comes to forestry, agriculture, food nutrition, and such.
That is some of the developments of science and technology in the Philippines in the American era. Let us now proceed in the post-colonial era. Number 1 is education in the world of science and technology. Since 1946, when the country gained independence, the number of state universities and institutions has increased, while the universities of the Philippines system remains the most developed, offering a wide range of graduate and undergraduate degree programs in science and engineering. Not only that, but the number of private universities and colleges has expanded since that period, but these numbers range in quality as well. The Secretariat universities and colleges, for example, are more financially secure and have been able to develop laboratory and library facilities for the science and engineering programs. Following that, the emergence of higher education in the Philippines was closely followed by the establishment of professional organizations of scientists and engineers. Moreover, the Philippines Medical Association fought hard to raise medical education standards by limiting enrollment in medical degrees and adding courses to the medical curriculum.
Hi, I am Lian Rishon Chua and I'm about to discuss the arts and literature in the post-Commonwealth era. The Commonwealth government encouraged the Filipinos to showcase their talents in arts and literature. They held contests for aspiring Filipino artists and writers. A contest in painting competed by the Filipinos was held under the government auspices in 1936. President Quezon established the Commonwealth Literary Contest in Tagalog, English, and Spanish upon the recommendation of the Philippine Writers League. The competition included biography writing, history, poetry, drama making, essay writing, short story making, and many more. The contest really uncovered the hidden talents of the Filipinos pertaining to arts and literature. The post-Commonwealth era is also the transitional period in Philippine literature from the American style to modern style. Also, Filipinos at this time learned how to express themselves more confidently. In addition, different characteristics of Philippine literature arise, such as romanticism, nationalism, independence, nature, and expression of feelings, and many writers had been famous for their literary works, such as Macario Pineda, Esteban Javellana, and NVM Gonzalez.
Number 3 is the Philippine economy. During the presidency of Elpidio Quirino, there were some developments in science and technology and improvements to the Philippine economy. He supported the establishment of several industrial plants, and he also launched an economic mobilization program which contributed to the country's industrialization and offered a lot of jobs to the people. In addition, he also built irrigation systems and roads to provide great help to Filipino farmers. Furthermore, these projects include Burgos Irrigation Project in Zambales, hydroelectric project in Lanao, and roads all over Mindanao.
Number 4 is jeepney, sometimes also called as jeeps. They're the most widely used kind of public transportation in the Philippines. They are famous for its cramped seating and colorful decorations, which have become a symbol of Philippine culture and art. Jeepneys are also called as the kings of the road. After the independence of the Philippines from the United States of America in 1946, there was a huge surplus of American jeeps in the country. Filipinos began recycling them into minibuses with galvanized or stainless steel bodies, cloth covering in place of side windows, and lengthways mounted benches seating around 20 or more people. Jeepneys are built almost everywhere in the Philippines, but the most popular creator of the jeepneys was the Sarao Motors by Leonardo S. Sarao. Nowadays, jeepneys are the backbone of public transit in Manila and other large cities, and are extremely popular due to their convenience and relatively low cost and fare.
Number 5 is the Science Act of 1958 or Republic Act number 2067. It is an act to integrate, coordinate, and intensify scientific and technological research and development and to foster invention, to provide funds therefore and for other purposes. In 1957, a report was submitted to the President pointing out the deterioration of Philippine science since the early years of American regime. The report analyzed causes of this decline: lack of government support, dearth of scientists of high training and ability, low morale of scientists, and lack of public awareness in science. It made several recommendations towards a long range of developments of science in the country. Consequently, Congress enacted the Science Act of 1958. The Science Act created the National Science Development Board or NSDB to formulate policies for the development of science and to coordinate the work of science agencies. The Act also created the Philippine Atomic Energy Commission and the National Institution of Science and Technology and placed these along with the National Research Council of the Philippines under the NSDB.
Number 6 is research laboratories. The establishment of Bureau of Government Laboratories was made in 1901 by the Philippine Commission. Its purpose is to study tropical diseases and laboratory projects in our country. Later on, it was replaced by the Bureau of Science in 1905. It became the primary research center of our country. In 1933, they established a National Research Council of the Philippines, and the Bureau of Science was replaced by the Institute of Science in 1946. However, these developments were not perfect. In 1950, there were reports made by the U.S. Economic Survey about the Philippine problems with regards to science and technology, such as low compensation, no support, and minimal budget in the post-Commonwealth era. That concludes the 11 developments of science and technology in the Philippines in the American and post-Commonwealth era. To summarize, we have transportation, discovery of minerals, communication system, science education, and tropical diseases in American era. And education, arts and literature, economy, land transportation, the Science Act of 1958, and lastly, the research laboratories in post-Commonwealth era. Thank you for watching, class. See you in our next session. Salamat.
Salamat!
Salamat!
Salamat!